This is The Close-Up. Conversations about creativity made possible by Barco. From our studios in Los Angeles, here is Jim Chabin.
If you make or consume video on a mobile device or flat screen, billions of bits of data have to move quickly to get it there. And behind the scenes, our next guests are working to stay ahead of your demands for faster delivery of your video. Guido Meardi serves as CEO of Vinova, the London-based software company creating systems which accelerate delivery of content across devices from chipsets to browsers. Fabio Murra serves as the company's senior vice president, and they are both here from London. Welcome, gentlemen, to Hollywood.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Anyone who has tried to download a video on a cell phone in an airport or try to get online from a car, the bits of information that have got to move faster. And it's fascinating that every time we have a system come out that is quicker, it doesn't last very long before consumers are saying, I want more and faster. So whether it's TV or broadcast satellite or phone transmission, what is happening in order to accelerate our ability to get the content that we want faster? And Fabio, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, you framed the problem perfectly. I think it's a problem for the content producers and the consumers alike. So the content producers can't get the beautiful content that is made in Hollywood and other broadcast centers around the world to the consumers in the pristine conditions that they want. At the same time, consumers cannot access that content. They cannot access it in the car, they cannot access it on the move, they really cannot access it in their homes either. So really our job is to make sure to connect the two things in the most efficient way, to make sure that the pipes that we have, which are fairly fixed, I mean, we're working and the industry is working to enlarge those pipes, but to make the most of the pipes that we have.
If you think of satellite providers, when we think of Sky, we think of DirecTV in the United States or Dish. They built these systems over the last 50 or 60 years. They may update them, but I was in New York City 2 weeks ago, and they're now developing Wi-Fi for people on the sidewalks. So it's not just that they're at capacity, it's that almost every month there's more and more data and people wanting to use this. So Guido, what's Perseus?
Yeah, and if I can, Jim,
sure.
Just before that, I would like to just point a couple of numbers to make the problem tangible on data networks, because yes, they are growing and everybody is investing in data networks, but the problem is demand is growing faster than capacity, and also devices that are already out in the ecosystem are what they are. We have billions of devices that are not going to go away for at least several next year. So it's very, very important to understand exactly what we have available. If we take the US, for instance, Netflix publishes prime time availability. On average, we're talking about 3.5 megabits. Average, which means a lot of people have less than that. This is very low if you want an immersive experience with the technologies that are in use today. If you're talking mobility in 4G means that very often you fall back in 3G and edge. So even the high expenditure consumers very often find themselves, and actually Netflix published the data recently, below 300 kilobits, which is actually what we see as well in other parts of the planet. So essentially, we're talking about a problem where very often, even early adopters, even high-spending people find themselves with very, very limited connectivity available. And then the devices that we use very often are constrained. Even if you take one of the latest Oculus Rift devices for immersive VR, the device can display 8K, which means excellent quality. You can really see well. But the problem is that same device can only decode 4K because the number of pixels it needs to process is so much that it can't make it in real time. So Perseus is actually the answer to this problem. The problem is we have these pipes. These pipes are not increasing massively over the next few years, because even in 5 to 10 years, the availability of bandwidth per person is not going to increase massively because demand is growing faster or at the same pace as we invest trillions of dollars in infrastructure. So essentially, we need to make it with these numbers that I mentioned. We need to increase the quality of experience. We need to give Ultra HD to all. We need to give VR immersive experiences to all with these devices, with these networks. And Perseus is the answer. So what is Perseus? Perseus is something that allows to deliver video at very high quality with very limited bandwidth on existing devices as well as new devices. In short terms, it is a next generation video codec, but actually a next generation video codec that was designed to bring phenomenal compression performances, but with less processing power and using hardware acceleration that was already available in existing devices. Traditionally, in the past decades, we've always seen every advance in codecs requiring new hardware, because essentially it was coming with better compression at the expense of inordinate amount of processing power. Perseus essentially inverted this and flipped it around and said, yes, I want more compression, but I want to use all the power that is in today's devices that was never used for compression. So this allows it to be very light from a processing power point of view, and also it leverages stuff that is already there. So all in all, operators and consumers are pretty happy, because it means that just with the software update at the starting point and end point, they can actually deliver super quality.
We should point out that consumers really don't buy this product. This is a product that major broadcasters and other companies develop. But you came from Ericsson. One of the most powerful demonstrations that I've seen recently is the Ericsson ultra high def television that generates more than 1,000 nits of light. The average television set at home that our viewers may be watching this on is about 100 nits. So 10 times the brightness, high dynamic range, increased color gamut, fantastic pictures, but all of this is going to require more data, right? Right. So what companies are you working with, and how fast do you think your technology can be implemented?
That is a lot more data, right? Bigger pictures, brighter pictures, more color, and we haven't finished. I mean, you said Ericsson demonstrated it, other companies are demonstrating it. I saw actually people like Jaunt VR launched a new camera. It can capture 16K already today. How do we get that 16K to an Oculus Rift that has an 8K monitor but can't process it? Right. I mean, this is the real problem. Right. We're building the ends, and we're getting people excited about all these beautiful experiences. We just can't fit all that data in the pipe. So you mentioned, you know, who we're working with and what we have done so far to kind of demonstrate that we can. And we had, over the past couple of years, examples of exactly that. You know, the willingness to push more data down pipes that were existing. I'll give you an example that hopefully resonates with some of the American audience, because it's very important in Europe. It's watched by hundreds of millions of people worldwide, and it's the European football or soccer championships. And there we had a real tangible problem with an audience on one side, the Italian audience of RAI wanting to access 4K television, and on the other side, a broadcaster and an operator willing to deliver it, but a pipe that was dedicated pretty much to just the HD pictures, which is what we used to and we monetize today. Well, with Perseus, our technology, we were able to squeeze HD to the point that we could fit it next to the HD streams down the same pipe. All of a sudden, you know, you could start giving that experience, building the momentum for a deployment at large scale, and we're talking broadcast, so, you know, a large scale of 4K HDR pictures to a whole population. So this is kind of the difference that the technology can make.
Sports is one of those areas that always gets the focus of new technology, because it is so requiring of any advancement you can find. So we're talking about high frame rate. Yep. That's what sports broadcasters want. The Olympics in 2020, the Japanese are saying will be broadcast in 8K. So think 8K. Fox Sports is using virtual reality or 360 viewing, high frame rate, 8K, high dynamic range, and virtual reality coming out of the same sports stadium with dozens of cameras, right? Many times live. So this is an area that that your solution can help make better?
Absolutely, and I let Guido kind of explain a little bit better on this, because live is important.
Yeah,
because sports is one of those things that you have to be live, you have to be high quality. People pay for it, people are passionate about it, people want to consume it as it happens, right?
In the best possible way.
And they want to see the ball.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But actually, you mentioned a lot of pixels that need to be processed in real time. So compression in that sense means I want to take all of this immersive experience, process it in real time. I don't have a nuclear power plant next to the stadium to do it, and maybe I don't have like, an entire building of servers, so I need to do it efficiently. And then I have a pipe that is what it is, because for the next foreseeable future, I have what I have. And actually, Perseus allows to do that with a simple software, because essentially by using a new codec format that is essentially like putting a different audio codec. We are used to that in audio, and Perseus does it for video as well. When you put AAC or put Dolby in audio in order to have a more immersive experience than using a traditional earlier generation codec, Perseus does exactly the same. You put a different video codec at the starting point, you leverage better compression, better quality, less bandwidth. At the end device, either you put a codec on the media player, or in HTML5 browser environments, we can also work with self-decodable scripts, and off you go. And actually, you can deliver immersive Ultra HD experiences within 4 megabits. You can deliver VR live at those bit rates. You can even deliver video for all, and we've done it in some places in the world already, watchable live sports video at 100 kilobits, which actually means even in the edge fallback, when you have the lowest amount of possible connectivity and you can just barely take a phone call, you can watch video with.
Let's talk about virtual reality a little bit. Some of the cameras are 60 frames a second. The virtual reality set manufacturers and the creative people want at least 100 frames per second. I was speaking with someone at the Void. They said ideally for virtual reality, they want 600 frames per second, because at 600 frames per second, you believe that you are virtually in a new space. That is a lot of data, and it's only, the headsets are at this point somewhat limiting, but they're pushing those boundaries. So what kind of solution do you have for VR or 360?
If I flip it over a little bit, because I think it's going in this new world. I mean, we were talking a few years ago, the first Olympics, the first World Cup in HD, the first tests now with 4K. I think we're going to get to a world where we shoot in the best possible format that we can in Tokyo, 8K, we'll see what frame rate, we'll see what color, and then we'll deliver it as efficiently as possible to as many devices as possible, as many formats, which means that you as a user is not anymore, can I get the HD signal or not? It's about what can I get through my pipe, and I get the best possible experience. And Perseus is very amenable to that, so we welcome higher resolution, we welcome higher frame rates, because we designed a codec that can scale to that. Codecs in the past were very much, what can I crunch, using more or less the same formula. What can I crunch out of my signal to get the next stage, from SD to HD, from HD to UHD. It's not like that anymore. I think we built from the bottom up.
And yeah, exactly. And just to say something about the 2 secret sauces, because it doesn't require a technical audience or a very technical audience to understand. Perseus works with 2 principles that are very intuitive. One is actually this scalability, so organizing information in a hierarchy from the lowest possible resolution, 1 pixel, to the highest possible resolution and frame rate. So information is like that, which is very flexible because, as Fabio said, allows also to play with that in a nice way when you have constricted pipes. The second principle is actually being massively parallel, which means it leverages all the processing power that was put in place for graphics and video games. If you combine that for what you said, which is immersive VR experiences at super high frame rates, super high resolution, etc., how can we use a guy like this that I have in my pocket, billions of people have it in their pocket. This guy is actually pretty powerful and can do gaming, can do graphics, etc. If you have a codec like Perseus to power it up, you can do a very simple thing, which is when I look left, I decode mostly left. I don't need to decode all the stuff that is in here because in that moment, for that moment, I'm looking there. And then when I turn my head and I look there, I decode right. And actually, this means that this guy can process all those pixels at those frame rates because it doesn't need to process them all the time. It receives them, but it decodes them on the fly as you need them.
So it decodes where you need the pixels.
Exactly.
And can do that at a very, very high level of quality because it's not, it's focused on where it puts the intelligence where it's needed.
But in the device.
In the device.
You know, it has to be personal, right?
Right.
You and I and Guido will look all in different ways, but we all want that in very immersive
So you
quality.
have two benefits because you can fit all of the immersion in the pipe, and the device doesn't need to decode it all at the same time, but just what you are watching.
Quality where you need it, lower battery consumption, you know, all the things that you need to make it a better.
So you're a London-based company, and you're solving problems for people all over the world. And what's fascinating is that we are at a point in our technological development where Kathleen Schroeder, our colleague from Fraunhofer Heinrich Hertz Institute in Berlin, said they are working on 5G. 5G will be 100 times faster, 100 times faster than some of what has come before. In India, I was in Mumbai last year, and out of the window of my taxi, I was struck by the fact that people living on the streets, by and large, many, many, many of them are holding a cell phone.
Absolutely.
So you have on one end of the technology spectrum, incredibly high speed, high quality, cost is no object delivery systems. On the other end, you have 1.2 billion Indians, many of whom do not have very limited financial resources, but that cell phone to them is a lifeline. So how do you, we've talked about the high end, how do you solve the problem for the vast majority of the billions of people who have cell phones who rely on them for everything but may not have the financial resources?
Yeah, and I think I mean, we're in a world that is fragmented, and it's going to get even more fragmented in terms of availability of devices, but also the pipes and the data that you can get to those pipes, even in the States, right? I mean, we have probably some of the first 5G rollouts here in the States, but they're going to be very concentrated. You know, Ericsson actually has a report every year. They expect 5G to cover 6% of the world population by 2022. So yes, that 6% may have greater capacity, we will see. But you know, 6%
of the global population by 2022.
Yeah, right. That's like in anyone's business
so what do we do for the other 94%, right?
50% of the world's population today is still 3G and 2G, right? And you said, right, it's not anymore about, it's about getting the content to those guys in the most efficient way, whatever the connectivity, and this is what Perseus is very good at, and we have a good experience in India where we brought video where people could only receive phone calls before.
Yeah, and we're bringing VR as well, but actually sometimes when people see what we did in India, they think, oh, okay, but that's only for developing markets, but we proved in very developed markets like London, for instance, one of the best covered cities on the planet, actually even for 4G subscribers, a pretty significant percentage of the time is spent actually with pretty low bandwidth. It's very bipolar. In certain moments you have a lot of bandwidth, but 10, 20, 30% of the time you don't, because it's either prime time, everybody wants to access it, or you're like in that part of the city where coverage is not that good, or for whatever reason your cell is full. Or there is a problem with the CDN delivery, because sometimes maybe you can even have 100 gigabits in the last mile, but if you have 5 million people asking for content at the same time in unicast delivery, you're going to have massive bottlenecks in the backbone.
Motion Picture Association of America and the National Association of Theater Owners met recently, and I attended their conference on their best customers, who are teenagers. And Generation Z coming along are mobile first, mobile only, and that's where they spend their day, talk to their friends, and want to consume content. So there is another generation coming up that are even more focused on these kinds of deliverables than their older siblings and their parents. For us to be successful, you guys have to be successful. So good luck. And thank you so much for explaining the future to us.
Thank you.
And come back and see us again and educate us again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guido. Thank you, Fabio.
The Close-Up is produced by the Advanced Imaging and VR Societies in Hollywood and is powered by Barco.